Welcome, everybody, to ESPN FC Live, coming at you 3 times a week on YouTube, digital, of course, 12 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT. Luis Miguel Echegaray, and next to me, both esteemed gentlemen of ESPN FC, Mark Ogden. How are you, Augie?
I'm very good, thanks for telling me.
You're looking good. And Gab Marcotti. It's been a while since we've had you on the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Delighted to be here with you and another one of the many people with the title of senior writer at ESPN.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic, fantastic Wednesday to you all, wherever you are. We got a big show, as you can see from our lineup. We'll be talking about Manchester United, of course, Erik Ten Hag's future, the pluses and minuses. We'll also talk about another team, Bayern Munich, of course, dealing with some issues post Thomas Tuchel when he leaves this summer. And because the ever-changing nature of different leagues, specifically in Europe, continuously grow, we'll talk about LaLiga versus the Premier League and so much more. Let's get straight to it because this is a show packed with a lot of information. Let's talk about Erik Ten Hag and Manchester United. Obviously, the big challenge right now is for them to reach a Champions League spot. And by the way, United today, right, will be traveling to Nottingham Forest in the 5th round of the FA Cup, and arguably the biggest game of their season right now. And guess what? After that, they'll be facing Manchester City in the Manchester Derby. So there's a lot going on. Now, Augie has written a great piece here about Erik Ten Hag and the pluses and minuses regarding his future, and there's a lot at stake here. So let me just straight away ask you this, Mark Ogden. Without Champions League for next season, what does that mean for Erik Ten Hag's future, do you think?
Well, I think it makes it pretty at Man United. So the fact that he's got one more season on his contract after this one, United have an option to extend it by a further year, is what they do on contracts, but ultimately he's got a year left of his contract. So to kind of see that third year in his contract, he has to get into the Champions League. I think Erik Ten Hag failing to get United in the Champions League is a big cross in the negative column, isn't it? You know, the team aren't playing particularly well right now. The tactics are questionable. We've had a lot of high-profile pundits question his tactics recently, and the fans are beginning to wonder how he's mismanaging so many big-name players. So if they fail to get into the Champions League, I think there are big issues at play. But one of the biggest issues, if they don't get the Champions League, is financial, because if you let them set in the Champions League, it's going to leave maybe a 40-50 million pound hole in their budget. To sack Ten Hag, I've been told it would cost in the region of 14 million pounds. So 14 million pounds to hire a new guy, you're looking at maybe 10, 12 million pounds just to get into the door. 30 million pounds, 50 million pounds shortfall Champions League. There's a lot of big financial questions for the club to answer here. And you know that we've been told that by the new regime in EOS, Jim Ratcliffe, that they want to stop the mistakes made by the previous regime in terms of financial waste. Well, if they're going to sack a manager, it's going to cost them a lot of money to do it, and it's going to affect the FFP situation. It's not a good start, but obviously you don't keep a guy if it's too expensive to get rid of him. You have to pick the right guy to do it, no matter what he costs.
Gab, as we mentioned in the intro, they're facing Nottingham Forest today in the FA Cup, and then Manchester Derby later this week. Now, you know, obviously Champions League qualification, Europe is important. If they bow out of the FA Cup, that's another season without a trophy. The only trophy they've gotten since 2017 is the Carabao Cup, which was last season. So I guess my question is the same to you in a similar notion. What do you make of United's journey so far, specifically now that they have a new CEO, new director of football, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's new stake? What do you make of that and the future of Erik Ten Hag as we look ahead, especially in a summer where a lot of clubs are going to be looking for new managers?
Well, you know that when I'm a guest, I get to be pedantic. So, first of all, Mark, did you say 14 million or 14 million? I just want to make that very clear. 1-4. Okay, all right. Because for a minute there, you know, it sounded like really sort of some sort of scary type Graham Potter, Julian Nagelsmann type situation. I don't think that is an enormous amount of money, because that is generally what you expect a United manager to be paid. So in that sense, if you do make a change, I don't think the damage is enormous. Also, and I'm sorry, but I woke up from my nap not that long ago. Did you say they have a new director of football, Luis?
Yes, that's right.
Dan Ashworth's been appointed today, or
Mark Ogden, can you confirm, or are we getting close to that notion?
Dan Ashworth will be Man United's director of football. It's not happened today, and it won't happen for a few months yet. But as we go, we'll have a new CEO, a director of football, potentially, possibly a new manager.
Okay. Yeah, I don't care about the new CEO, whatever, within the context of the Ten Hag decision. I think the single most important thing, and I go back to saying, I feel like one of those like crazy people like shouting like into the wind. You can't fire, or you should not fire or retain Erik Ten Hag based upon results on the pitch about whether you win trophies or not. Manchester United are not good right now. They are not where they should be in light of their history and in light of their resources. You keep or you fire Erik Ten Hag based upon whether you think they can get you where you want to be, right? Ratcliffe said 3 years. 3 years they hope to be competing for or on the par where City are now or whatever. If you think he can get you there, then you stick with him. You don't need to go and rush right away and give him a new deal. You know, you've got that option here that Mark talked about. But I think that is the way they have to think about it. And more importantly, the person making that decision or making a big part of that decision should be Dan Ashworth. So I was going to say, like, unless you know for a fact that Ashworth's coming, unless you can right now, while he's still under contract with Newcastle, unless you have access to Ashworth and Ashworth has access to the information that he needs to make that decision, you do not make any kind of decision. I mean, I don't know if this makes sense to you guys, but it's important that we have accountability. We know who's making the decisions. So in a roundabout way, it definitely should not support, depend on whether they advance in the FA Cup. It should depend largely on what Dan Ashworth thinks. And if Dan Ashworth says, listen, I can't make that decision until I'm actually there, until I'm actually talking to people, then you should wait until such time.
Okay, so
let's jump in there. Can I jump in there? I think listen, Gab's right in a technical and legal sense that United can't do any deals with Dan Ashworth until he's through the door. But it'd be naive to think that if Erik Ten Hag finishes 7th or 8th this season, wins no trophies, that they can't remove the manager just because they haven't got a director of football. These decisions have to be made, and I'm sure WhatsApp messages get exchanged.
Right. You're going to have to. It might not be 20 million. Like many, like everybody seemed to write all of a sudden, but you're going to commit, right? You've committed on a new rebuild, right? You've committed on doing things in the correct way. There has to be accountability. You cannot have a situation where you say you sack Ten Hag because you finish 7th and you don't like finishing 7th, and then Ashworth comes in, Ten Hag goes somewhere else, he does brilliantly, whatever, you bring in a dud, and then Ashworth's like, well, don't look at me, I wanted to keep Ten Hag. I mean, you can't have that. So I think either you say, Ashworth, you're definitely coming, even though we can't say it yet for legal reasons and those scummy lawyers again, or you say, Ashworth, we're bringing you in to make the big decisions. This is the biggest decision we have to make right now, is whether to keep him or not. I think it's critical that he be the key driver together with Brailsford and whatever wise people Ratcliffe surrounds him with. That has to be who makes the decision. It can't just be a reaction based on where you finish in the league.
John Poggy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that things move differently than that. I'm pretty sure that Man United have had conversations with Dan Ashworth right now, Dave Brailsford, Jim Ratcliffe, because if they hadn't, how do they know that he wants to come to Man United? So if they're looking for a new manager in the summer, names will have been mentioned, names will have been addressed. Maybe look at this guy, look at that guy. I don't think Man United, yes, Gab's right, there has to be a process and accountability. They've got to get it right. But also, sometimes they have to fast-track decisions. And if they feel at the end of this season that Erik Ten Hag isn't the right guy, results aren't great, tactics aren't great, players are unhappy, there's not a lot of things in Erik Ten Hag's favour right now which would say, yeah, let's stick with the guy. And also, anecdotally as well, if you look at clubs that have got new owners or new regimes, they generally get a new manager within 6 to 12 months. It's very rare that a new regime doesn't. So I think everything points towards the fact that Erik Ten Hag has to do something quite spectacular to be in the manager's job at United next season.
Let's remind ourselves, this is not a new owner. This is a guy who's bought, 26.7%
it's a new regime.
Club. New regime, but a new regime where if they want to actually spend money, they're just in charge of the football side. But as soon as they want to actually spend money, and it takes money to run a football club, they need to get the Glazers to sign off on it, right? So it's a new owner, but it's not like an entirely new owner. It's a new part owner who has to ask permission from the Glazers. I mean, that's the reality facing United right now.
Okay, so let's play a hypothetical for a second, and let's wrap this up because we've got a few other things to talk about. But Gab, let me go to you, and then Augie, you have the last word right after. Gab, let's play the hypothetical. Obviously, As you mentioned, it's not a new owner. And let's remember, the Glazers have not gone anywhere right now as well. But let's talk about this. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, Manchester United, right, lose to Nottingham Forest, or they lose eventually and they don't get a trophy in the FA Cup. Let's say that Manchester United's run in the Premier League goes even lower, and they don't even, forget Champions League, they don't even get Europe. What do you say there? Does Erik Ten Hag leave in the summer, should you think? Or do you still think, no, because we have a full summer under a new regime, as Ogden stated, that he should stay? What do you think?
This is why you hire a director of football.
Let's say you're the director of football.
If I'm the director of football, Ten Hag's gone. It is very simple. It's gone. But again, I think most United fans would feel that way, right? 2 years, no real forward progress. Your big signings have either been duds or they've been injured. Enough, right? And your pal Murta would probably be gone too, because you'd want to turn the page, and Ashworth would probably want to new people, or me in this case, since I'm role playing as Dan Ashworth. But yeah, I think if I were in charge, I think that would be. But that's because, in my opinion, United haven't really progressed. Ten Hag hasn't brought the style of football and the approach that he had at Ajax, which presumably is why they signed him in the first place. That's kind of the main discriminant that I would use.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're getting hung up on the director of football situation. Liverpool are looking for a new manager this summer. They haven't got a director of football or a sporting director yet. So who's going to hire the new Jurgen Klopp? Is it going to be the owners, the regime, or is it going to be this non-appointed?
Sorry. Are you complaining the way Liverpool Football Club run and operate, and the way they've run and operated for the last decade?
Yeah, but they're not a sporting director right now. They have a vacuum in that position that you think is really important, and they're going to make an appointment. So yes, you're right that they've got experience of appointing managers, but it's been done by a certain structure which they don't have right now. So to the question in terms of Ten Hag's survive, and if I was the director of football, no, I would move him on. I don't think he's good enough for Man United. He's done well at Ajax, but I think he's come out of a league that is quite an unchallenging league, and he's been tested in a much tougher league against better coaches, and he's fallen short. And I think we've seen that in the performance of the players. A lot of Man United players have left, none more so than maybe Marcus Rashford. So I think that Ten Hag's had a decent crack at it, but I think this summer, even if he gets in the Champions League, even if Ten Hag gets United in the Champions League, I think they should move him on. I don't think he's good enough for Man United, and I don't think qualifying for the Champions League is enough for a Man United manager. I think they have to be better than that.
So are we pretty sure they're not going to, given Brailsford's there, given that, the experience with bald managers from the Eredivisie, we feel pretty confident they're not going to be tempted to appoint Peter Bosch or Arne Slot. Brailsford's like, I need more people from the bald fraternity around me at this club. You feel pretty confident the next United manager will have a full head of hair, right? Is that what you're saying, Augie?
Well, he might have no hair by the time he finishes at Man United, but let's see what happens in terms of when he starts. I don't know.
Well, one thing is for sure, it's a very important week for Manchester United, as any other week, I guess, before this season. And a brightly sparked Gab Marcotti, just woken from a nap, would be a wonderful director of football for any club. All right, let's move on for a second, but it's not completely unrelated, everybody, from Manchester United to Munich, where Bayern will also be saying goodbye to their manager, Thomas Tuchel, at the end of the summer, regardless of any outcome. Bayern are trailing the popular kids in school right now. Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga by 8 points and trailing to Lazio 1-0 in the round of 16 in the Champions League, though you would think that they will turn things around in the second leg. You would think. But let's go with this. Gab Marcotti, is it the most stupid idea in the world? And please blame our producers, Tom King, specifically about this question. Is it the dumbest idea to suggest that Thomas Tuchel and Erik Ten Hag doing a job swap in the summer, and it could work for both clubs?
Yes, it's almost as stupid as undermining Tuchel by saying that, oh, look, we don't think you're good enough to continue and you'll be fired at the end of the season, you'll be gone, and thinking that's a good idea rather than hiring an interim replacement. It's almost as stupid as bringing in Erik Ten Hag to replace him. I mean, I know he's got a past at Bayern, but hey, guess what? Like, people in Munich have televisions too, and they have access to the internet. They know what's gone on at Manchester United. So, yes, that would be a terrible. I think that would be a terrible idea. Would probably be marginally better for United because I think Tuchel's probably a better manager than Erik Ten Hag. But that said, given the way he's handled situations and egos this season, it hasn't been great either. So, no, I don't think this is anything that anyone should contemplate.
Yeah, I've got to say that will be a pretty bad swap for Bayern. I think, Bayern have got a guy who's leaving has won Champions League, domestic titles in Germany and in France. He's a guy that did quite well at Chelsea before being sacked unceremoniously by Todd Bowley. And Bayern in return get a guy that's won the Dutch league and badly at Man United, I think. So, no, I don't think Bayern are going to go down that route. I think Erik Ten Hag, after Man United, I'm not sure what sort of level of job he gets. I think this is his shot at a job. And I think after that, I think we're looking at mid-ranking clubs again just to rebuild his reputation. So, no, I don't see Bayern Munich going for Erik Ten Hag. I think there's probably a lot more managers and coaches who'd take that ahead of him.
All right, so we're blaming production for that question. Don't kill the messenger here. But let's stay here with Bayern Munich because there will be a job available for next season for the Bavarians. Augie, let's begin with you, and then Gab, of course, jump in. Who could replace Thomas Tuchel, do you think, if it isn't Xabi Alonso, and if he takes the Liverpool job, or dare I say a Real Madrid job, or he doesn't go to Bayern Munich in the first place? Zinedine Zidane. My producers have forced me once again to say Unai Emery, but I reject that completely. Jose Mourinho, Hansi Flick, Sebastian Hoeneß. Who do you think?
Well, it depends what market they want to go to. I mean, I think Hansi Flick's probably not to having really, struggled with a Germany job. And he won the Champions League with Bayern, basically. He just left the engine running, didn't he? It was like Zidane at Real Madrid. So I'm not sure Flick's the ideal candidate. I mean, look, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, they're both kind of front runners for Xabi Alonso. One of them's not going to get him. Maybe they both won't get him. So beyond that, Bayern have to maybe be creative. I think in the past they've gone down the route of Ancelotti, Guardiola. Zidane to Bayern Munich, it could work. They like a big name manager. But it depends what they want. Do they want a guy with a big name and a track record of winning things elsewhere? Do they go for the Hoeneß types who are doing really well in Germany now, an up-and-coming coach? But they did that with Nagelsmann, Kovac. I'm not quite sure that is the route they're going to go down, but who knows? I guess it's all about all the eggs in Xabi Alonso basket and then hope for the best. But I just don't see Xabi Alonso leaving Bayer Leverkusen for Bayern Munich. I think Liverpool's a better job for him, but it depends what the kind of the promises from the owners and the board at each club is offered a job.
Yeah, Gab, let's take in mind Zinedine Zidane has not managed in 3 years. Does that matter? Is he a name that you would consider? Who do you think Bayern Munich will go to, or who you should think they should go to?
So, again, I hate to repeat myself, but I think Max Eberl will be the one who should be making that decision when he finally lands there. I don't know. Jules keeps telling me that Zinedine Zidane is waiting until after the Euros to go and take the France job, and I have to believe him. He's had so many chances to get back into management. I don't see why he would want to test himself in a new league. Zidane at rest tends to stay at rest. I think that's one thing that we've learned over the years. Xabi Alonso is a phenomenal manager. I personally, as a fan of the Bundesliga, I really wouldn't like it. I absolutely hate the way Bayern go and ransack the opposition, often when they're actually still competing with them, because let's face it, the Bundesliga title, it's 8 points, but it's not over yet. It's not mathematically over, right? So we've seen this in the past where they're, going back to Neuer and Lewandowski and stuff like that. You can say, look, we've weakened them and we've strengthened ourselves. I think it would be a stupid decision for Xabi Alonso to go there, given where the club are, given how the previous managers who've been there, how they have fared. So, no, I mean, I think Sebastian Hoeneß kind of feels like flavor of the month because Stuttgart, look, they're doing well. I want to give Bayern credit and saying, yeah, we're taking a run at Xabi Alonso because we have to, but he's probably not going to come. We're really taking our time with this decision, and we found a way to communicate with Max via carrier pigeon or something, and he's hoping to guide that decision.
Well, I mean, there is a very big name, very successful German manager that's going to be able to work this summer. I don't want
to. I know, but he's not. Jurgen's not going back there. Stop it.
The wrong Jurgen. I don't think Jurgen Klopp will break his kind of.
Why are we even talking about this?
No, because it's a kind of a podcast. Let's chat about it. Jurgen Klopp is the biggest name.
Let him talk, Gab. Let him say his piece.
But ultimately, I think Klopp is committed to a year out. But this is Bayern Munich. They are the biggest club in Germany by a long, long way. Klopp has family in Germany. Would it be the worst thing in the world?
Family in Germany.
Listen,
really?
no. Listen, I think it's unlikely, but still, I think you have to bear in mind the people involved. It's Bayern Munich, so I think it's unlikely, but you never know. And Klopp, I'd imagine the summer's unlikely, but there could be some sort of agreement. So look, take 6 months off. He came out of a sabbatical early to take the Liverpool job back in 2015. So I don't think it's likely, but if there's a 1% chance that Bayern could get Jurgen Klopp,
I would be so disappointed in Jurgen Klopp and everything he stands for, everything he stood for, if he did this. I mean, honestly, this would add nothing, would add zero to his career, and it would just piss a lot of people off. So, Jurgen, I don't even think you're. I think you're.
It'd have a great villa in Bavaria. The German.
I think you'll have that anyway.
He has enough money.
I think Jurgen Klopp has made it very clear he wants a break from everything, and rightly so. All right, let's finish up here with a great topic for midweek, courtesy of a great piece from Gab Marcotti as well. Let's talk about star product and star power, as the game is a massive business, obviously, where audience attention largely depends on many factors. But as Gab puts it in his latest piece, a league's popularity, specifically the Premier League here, goes beyond star power. According to Nielsen, by the way, the Premier League regularly accumulates more than 3 billion viewers over 190 countries per match. It is by far the most popular league in the world, and just now has overtaken Liga MX as number 1 in the US as well. So all this information, Gab Marcotti, per your piece, what makes the Premier League product so strong?
Well, like I said, it's not the megastar. This is more of a response or a polemic to, all the lemmings, all the Muppets who said, "Oh, look at all the superstars going to Saudi. Like they're going to be the third best or second or third best league in the world in a couple of years." And I just asked myself, what are the 2 most successful sports leagues in the world, right? By almost every metric other than perhaps followers on social media. And it's the Premier League and it's the NFL. And I would challenge most people, even NFL fans, to ask them, like, how many NFL players, other than quarterbacks and people who play for the teams that you support or the teams in your division, could you actually recognize with their helmets off? I would argue not many. And by most metrics, they're way behind the NBA, for example, which is much more about, marketing itself based on the individual superstar. And I think in some ways it's the same thing with the Premier League. And it's not just me saying, it's Richard Masters. I asked him about it. And he said, yeah, we haven't really had the absolute biggest superstars. And in the piece that you mentioned, I look at obviously followers. I look at finishes in the Ballon d'Or, which is a gigantic popularity contest, as you know. And the reality is, when it comes to, superstars with followings and so on, the Premier League obviously has some. It's a massive league, but it's not on a par with leagues elsewhere. Really hasn't been on a par with leagues elsewhere for the past 15 or 20 years. And yet it absolutely wipes the floor with them in terms of commercial success, in terms of audience and importance. So I think the message is that if you have a well-run league, if you have a league with teams that are successful, if you've got a really good product, if you've got governance, if you've got credibility, interestingly enough, and I'm going to troll MLS for a second. When I asked Richard Masters about it, he said, "Oh, you need to have jeopardy because in our league, it's not guaranteed that all the big teams are going to finish near the top, and obviously teams can get relegated." I thought to myself, "Oh, promotion relegation, is that an ingredient to being a successful league? Like, let's make sure MLS don't find out about that one." But yeah, if you have those things, then you can be successful. And, having a superstar, the novelty even of the biggest superstar, you saw that in MLS with David Beckham, with Zlatan and so on, doesn't move the needle in and of itself. People get excited for a while, then they move on to something else.
It's probably a good lesson for the Saudi Pro League, Mark Ogden, because per our colleague, Rob Dawson, the Saudi Pro League clubs will be heavily focusing on Premier League players this summer, including Kevin De Bruyne, Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Alisson, Rafael Varane, Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, and so many more. Given from that piece and what Gab was just talking about, I take it the Premier League shouldn't be really that worried, or what do you think about that amount of targeted players? heading towards the Premier League, or at least getting them out of it?
I think on the Saudi situation, I think the Premier League is probably quite excited at the possibility of getting rid of a lot of high earners and a lot of I mean, listen, Casemiro, Varane. If Man United are told that is willing to take them off their hands, they'd be delighted. So, absolutely no danger of Premier League clubs worrying about Saudi Arabia. I think, I was told last year that yes, they were going to target lots of players, but they were going to steer clear of Northern Europeans because they didn't think they would settle and enjoy the culture. And I think, Jordan Henderson is Exhibit A in terms of, they want to target South Americans, African players, players from that region. So, but on the bigger point of Gab's piece, I think, the most compelling story in the Premier League in the last 20 years was Leicester City winning the top. And that was a team without superstars. That was, they had Jamie Vardy, Riyad Mahrez, N'Golo Kante became stars, but at the start of that season, they weren't stars, and they're not global stars in the same, areas of Ronaldo or Messi. So I think that shows the strength of the Premier League. And also, if you talk about no superstars in the Premier League, but I guess right now, I think for the first time maybe in the Premier League's history, they did sign a global superstar at the top of his game in Erling Haaland. He's got to Man City. But Man City right now, yes, they have on the pitch, but if you look at the viewing figures of games or the metrics in terms of who reads what, it's Man United, it's Liverpool, it's Arsenal, it's not Man City. Erling Haaland going to Man City hasn't made them the biggest club in the world or the most exciting club in the world. It's just added to the Premier League itself. So Gab's right in the sense that you don't need superstars. You need compelling stories, teams with history, teams with stories to tell. And I think we do get a superstar mentality at the area that you need a superstar. And Saudi Arabia are finding that there's a short-term buzz. And the crowds in Saudi Arabia right now are to the floor at some clubs. Some clubs are getting, barely over 1,000 people watching the game. So I don't think anytime soon the big leagues in Europe are worried about Saudi Arabia. They're more likely seeing it as a great place to get rid of players that are too expensive.
Yeah, Mark, you mentioned the crowds there. It's a stat. I mentioned it because it's one of my favorite stats, and I can't explain it. And I'd love for people to explain this to me. The average attendance in Saudi Arabia this season is lower than it was last season before all these stars arrived. And that's despite, is it Al Ahly, one of the 4 biggest clubs, being promoted into the top flight, right? Can somebody please explain this to me?
Well, they get huge crowds in Riyadh. I think, Al Ahly,
the average attendance is down. All the superstars
absolutely.
have come. The average attendance is down.
I checked one of the games that I played before Christmas when Jordan Henderson was still there and Gerrard was having a bit of a struggle, and I'm pretty sure it's 3 figures. And I'm like, wow, what sort of attendance is this? But maybe they put the prices up. Maybe they've done the Premier League thing and put the prices, maybe pricing fans out of the game. I don't know, but still, you're right. The ground should be full if they've got all these aging superstars. Veterans leagues aren't that exciting to fans, are they? They want to see the real deal.
Well, a good example of what we're talking about in terms as well of star product, star power, player power is, of course, Kylian Mbappes, who attended a royal reception.
You were going to mention Lionel Messi. You're the Lionel Messi correspondent.
I can't.
Powers elevating. You've avoided the question all along, LME.
What do you mean? I can't listen. Every time I talk about Lionel Messi, $20 goes right into LME's pocket. So I got to be careful about what I say. Let's talk about Kylian Mbappes, for example, by the way, because obviously with this almost but certain, let's hope this French telenovela will be over soon as he will head off to Real Madrid and a new era of the Galacticos will begin. Gab Marcotti, very quickly, because we're running out of time. Do you see Mbappe's move to La Liga, Real Madrid? Will that be a shift? Maybe a little bit of an impetus of power for La Liga over other leagues once Mbappe joins Real Madrid. What do you think?
I just finished telling you that it's not about stars, it's about teams. So
yeah, but we were talking about the Premier League. I'm just wondering if Mbappe's introduction to La Liga may help a little bit. I mean, we're having a conversation here.
Okay. No. So genuinely, I don't think so. No. Well, first of all, I'm surprised nobody's linked Mbappe again to Saudi. Who knows? He hasn't signed for Real Madrid yet, but we're assuming he's going there. But, the dude's changed his mind at the last minute many, many times. So until he signs on the line that is dotted and shows up at his presentation at the Bernabeu, I'm going to assume the man is still the free agent to be. No, I don't think he's going to move the needle because this is Real Madrid we're talking about, right? They're already one of the biggest brands in the world. I mean, when we're talking about marketing success, you market leagues, right? You talked about Van Dijk and Salah possibly leaving Liverpool. When they leave Liverpool, the Liverpool fans will still be there, right? Except for the 3 or 4 Muppets who are like, oh, look, Salah's gone. I'm no longer going to support Liverpool. I'll go support. Yeah, I'm sure people like that exist. I don't want to know people like that. But yes, unfortunately, they exist. But they're not the majority when it comes to the Premier League. So I think Mbappe will make Real Madrid even better than they are. But, the Real Madrid brand's been around. They've been the biggest club in the world for a long, long time. And I don't think it's going to elevate it's necessarily going to elevate Real Madrid. Does it elevate La Liga? A lot will depend, again, marketing-wise, how, and here it's kind of, inside baseball, the relationship between Real Madrid versus La Liga. Like, do Real Madrid use Mbappe to market themselves even further, assuming they need to? Or do they kind of cede control a little bit to Tebas and La Liga? That is a whole separate issue. But, yeah, there's no question. I mean, he's going to help Real Madrid and, by extension, La Liga.
Augie, last thoughts?
Yeah, I do think it would help the league. Obviously, they've seen Messi go in recent years. They lost Ronaldo a few years prior to that. And I do think that La Liga does need a kind of a showcase star. But obviously, they've got Jude Bellingham, who's quite a big star. So I don't think it'll make that much of a difference. But I think it'll make a small difference. But, it's still Real Madrid, as Gab says. It's Real Madrid. Had he gone to Barcelona, that might have been a bit different. It might have kind of leveled it out a little bit and shown that Barca are on the way back. But, he's just going back to the biggest club. He's going to the biggest brand, I guess. So it would be better for La Liga as a competition, as a global brand for him to go to Barcelona. But that's not happening anytime soon with the way that Barcelona's finances are.
Well, let's all hope that telenovela comes to an end, as Gab said, because I'm kind of over it. I need him to just make that decision straight away. And by the way, Premier League and NFL, another major component, because I know both of you don't do it, but fantasy football is a big deal as well, in the Fantasy Premier League as well. More than 4 million people play that stuff. I think that kind of exposure helps a lot with the younger audiences.
You say 4 million people?
On the Fantasy Premier League, yes.
Out of 7 billion people in the whole world? So like 0.5%? Wow.
4 million within the market of the Premier League is not bad when you're just literally talking about fantasy.
Did you tell me before that the market of the Premier League was 3 billion people, actually? Just
the global viewership. But if you can get an if you can get an extended tentacle from the Premier League and play fantasy and attract younger audiences, that helps. Fantasy football in the NFL is a massive industry. The Premier League is nowhere near to that number, but if you can create a sort of different tentacle that attracts younger audiences through fantasy, that helps as well. I'm not saying that 4 billion people are going to play Fantasy Premier League. I'm saying that right now, 4 million people is a substantial number that helps. You're just diminishing it because you don't play.
No, it's true. I don't play. I never understood places where it's legal to bet why you would choose to play rather than bet.
No, but there's no money involved for many. I mean, I play fantasy.
I know. I don't get that. As you know, my co-host on the Gab and Jules show is a big fantasy dude.
Oh, he's massive. Yeah.
So I have max respect. If you want to play fantasy, go knock yourself out. I don't think it's an age thing either, because Augie's looking useful in his red top. You don't play fantasy, right? It's for Muppets, right, Augie?
No, not me. That's in the real world.
It's for Muppets. Go back to sleep, Gab Marcotti. Hey, listen, by the way, I didn't talk about Lionel Messi, but do you like my new pink Inter Miami Adidas? Do you like them? Would you wear them, Gab?
Yeah.
I got no problems with pink shirts, but for me, there's only one shirt. There's only one club in the world who had the original cool-looking pink shirt, the pink and black attack of Palermo.
Parma. Oh yeah, Palermo. Sorry, no Parma.
Parma wear pink shirts in your fantasies. Yes, like your fantasy city. Yeah. So if Inter Miami want to go and copy Palermo, who, by the way, are now proud members of City Football Group, go knock yourselves out.
A wonderful end to the show. Gab Marcotti, make sure to read his latest piece. And of course, Mark Ogden, make sure to read his piece on the plus and minuses of Erik Ten Hag. We will be back later in the week. And don't forget, Manchester United shift to Nottingham Forest exclusively on ESPN Plus, 2:45 Eastern, if you are a US viewer. We will see you next time. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Till then, bye-bye.